Perfect. Okay, thanks a million for that. So look, firstly, anyway, good evening to everybody, and thank you all for coming online again. I suppose just as a general comment, we've noted that the submissions are much lower than they were the last time. But as Martha had alluded to last night, I think there could be a bit of exhaustion and fatigue around the whole online piece. But it could also be maybe that, look, we've picked up the issues and they are being dealt with. But I'm sure, there probably is that bit of fatigue setting in. So look, I want to welcome all the councillor representatives that are here this evening. I also want to welcome Superintendent Colm O'Sullivan and his team from An Garda Síochána, and appreciate you all being here. I'd like to welcome the chairs of the community safety forums, of course, who are linking to the communities. And just to remind everybody, if you could please stay on mute unless you want to ask a question. And if you do want to ask a question towards the end, please just use the raise your hand button and I'll come to you in turn. Also, just to be aware that this is being streamed live through the City Council website, and we could have some media. So I suppose just to let you know, the running order for this evening is I might ask Martha Halbert to come in for Cork City Council and just to talk about maybe some of the issues that have been picked up at the last meeting and the progress on those. And then I will hand over to Colm O'Sullivan and his team for their feedback, and then we'll open the floor to questions. So I'll hand over to you there, Martha, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thanks, Emil. Adrian, and as you said, not a huge number of submissions this time around, but I do have a little bit of follow-up. So the first one just pertains to a resident of Princess Street, actually, and I suppose just keeping in mind that since the May forum, there would obviously be a lot more activity around Princess Street, and obviously it's kind of been one of the more high-profile streets to be developed as a pedestrianised space, and there was some concern over kind of queues all over the public footpath. Just kind of, obviously it's got high kind of throughput, and there's also a pub opened under this person's apartment, quite loud music and so on. So just about a few concerns around how that's being managed. So our street inspector for street furniture licenses has detailed some of the extensive interactions on Princess Street. So I might just, it's quite lengthy, but I suppose it's useful maybe just to reassure residents and members of the public that the council really is monitoring and inspecting that space, and I imagine all pedestrian spaces in the city really closely. So just around Princess Street, site inspections were carried out on June 29th, July 4th and July 7th, and the main issues found at that point were kind of pedestrians roaming all over footways and dining areas, small queues, the pedestrian crossing hadn't been installed at that point. So then there were meetings with traders, and these issues were addressed as follows. A one-way signage for pedestrian footway usage. Clancy's were considering extra security to manage the queuing. The pedestrian crossing was put in place right around the centre of Princess Street there just to assist pedestrian movement. Transverse street furniture barriers were installed on the roadway to delineate the different traders' allocated areas. And then subsequent ad hoc inspections were carried out during 2021. A daytime site inspection was carried out on the 9th of June in response to a complaint. So there were some issues around small pockets of queuing, and then a subsequent inspection as part of a site meeting with Cork Art Supplies. And then the only issue really raised was planters placed on the roadway. They weren't being removed during non-pedestrian times. So there's kind of, it goes on like that. I mean, I suppose there's 3 or 4 different inspections that have been taken out kind of around street furniture and the transition between day and night and so on. And I suppose it is understood that there may be issues on the street from time to time, but the licensing section continues to do as much as it can to secure the space and make sure that it's safely available for all users. I suppose it's no harm for this person to have raised these concerns, because again, that message has gone back up to our licensing team, and hopefully they will continue to monitor it. But I just say to that person, please to make sure to kind of continue to report these issues to the council customer service line, and then, you know, there will be a close eye kept on it. John O'Rourke, who's our Community Safety Forum forum chair, has just put in a few queries, one around the park at Connacht Avenue requiring maintenance. Now, the Boer War Monument has recently undergone maintenance there. I saw it last week. It looks fantastic, and that's been kind of really welcomed in the area. The parks team have then also taken into consideration the need to maintain the railings to the rear of the park, as well as the need to cut back foliage and to stop interference with lighting. So I've spoken to our senior engineer in parks, and he's aware with that, and he's going to go out and get his team to take a look at that. Something that came up at our last meeting was around the pedestrian crossing on Donovan's Road, and actually it's funny, I couldn't kind of place it in my head at the last meeting, and I went down afterwards to have a look at it, and I kind of see why now, and myself and John had a good chat about it, and the engineer. It's not a very visible crossing. It is there, but it's just painted onto the road, and it's just at a kind of a funny place in terms of visibility. So I know that John was saying to me that the council had been out to visit and do an engineering analysis and had found it, we'll say, sufficient at the time, but I know that UCC also have concerns around it. So again, a senior engineer in our roads department is going to add it to a list to be considered. How it works in terms of adding the amber lights at the side of pedestrian crossings is that kind of distinct pockets of funding need to be found for that and applied for it. So it's just a matter of all of the pedestrian crossings across the city need to be prioritised according to when those funding streams come up. So I'm going to keep tic-tacking with John on this, just so that we can make sure that we can date each one of those assessments, and so that there's maybe a chain of communication that we can maybe hopefully reach some kind of improvement on that space. And then John had also mentioned that the junction between the Bandon Road and McCurtain Villas, the surfacing is very poor on that. Again, I've reported this to road colleagues, and it will be assessed for remediation. Just two updates that aren't specifically issues for the forum, but just to let people know that I have been in touch with the community officer in UCC, Gary Mulcahy, who was hoping to be here tonight, but I'm not sure if he was able to make it. So he just wanted the attendees to be aware that there is a new post for a community outreach officer coming up in UCC soon, and that really is part of the college's attempt to work more closely with residents, and I know they're very committed to that, and making sure that you see our good neighbours as well as everything else. So that's will be coming up in the near future. And then finally, there was a query. Councillor McFinn had submitted a query around the fact that obviously we're running these meetings according to the community policing areas, so Cork North, Cork Centre and Cork South. And Councillor Finn was just mentioning that some of the areas are contingent, so there's quite a lot of overlap between, like I suppose he'll be at, as he would have been before, he would have been at a few forums, and I'm sure many of the electorate members here tonight are in the same situation. So what I'm going to do after this, if it's okay for everyone, I've been in touch with the team in Anglesey Street and Superintendent O'Sullivan's colleagues, and they have developed a mapping tool which will allow people to have a much clearer understanding of what the areas are, as well as a lot of other really useful information, I'm sure. And I think that might be interesting for us to consider as we plan how these safety forums evolve. And I know that's a piece of work that the council, need to do with our colleagues in An Garda Síochána, but it just might be useful, particularly for our elected members who want to make sure that they can be speaking for their constituents in each of those general community policing areas. So yeah, as I said, I'll forward that with the minutes of the meeting. So that's actually all from me, Adrian, for now.
Thanks for that, Martha. So Colm, I might actually hand over to you now and your team for maybe an update from the last meeting. And if there's anything that you want to highlight for anybody, thank you.
Okay. Well, I suppose from just looking at from the minutes of the last meeting there, a lot of the issues that were raised at that time and submissions have already been dealt with now by Martha in relation to the antisocial behaviour. As I said previously, not every instant or not every gathering of people is antisocial. I accept there are people out there that can be quite loud and quite boisterous and cause a certain amount of nuisance to people. But again, we have to apply the law in terms of the Public Order Act and in terms of aggressive and abusive behaviour in a public place. So we have to make that balance that's there. In relation to crime matters across the city, and because I'm just looking at charts here next to me, crime is Last year, we must remember we had a significant period of lockdown. We had nearly 9 months of lockdown because of COVID. This year, the city is reopening, but having said that, crime levels are still quite low. Like property crime is down, burglaries are down, theft from shops are down, theft from vehicles are down, crimes against the persons are down, assaults are down, and they'd all be what we would call the headline crimes. Moving on from there, theft of property is down. What we are seeing is an increase in theft of property in the city centre from people leaving phones on tables or handbags over the back of chairs. And, you know, they're creating an opportunity for crime to be committed. So what I would say to anybody there is, if you are out, and everybody today has a smartphone, but if I said to anybody, will you put €600 or €700 on the table there and walk away and leave it after you, everybody would look at me and laugh. But yet the majority of people in this forum here tonight will probably leave their mobile phone on the table and walk away to do something and come back and expect the phone to be there. And a mobile phone is going to cost €600, €700 or €800, or even these smartphones are going to cost even more. So I would ask people just to be conscious of where they are, what they're doing, and when they're out and about, you know, if there's a person and they have their smartphone, keep it on their person. If there's someone sitting down and they have a handbag or shopping bags and they have them over the back of a chair when they're sitting down someplace in a public area out in the street. And we have huge areas at the moment that are in with, you know, the on-street dining in the coffee shops or the tables and chairs outside of it. And it's great for the city that is occurring. But, you know, if you have something, a bag, don't leave it over the back of the chair or a rucksack or something like that, because you're creating the opportunities for crime to be committed. So just be conscious of that. But in general, Adrian, like crime is certainly reduced in comparison with the 2 years ago. We have the city reopening on Friday. The pub opening hours are back to normal. The nightclub opening hours are back to normal. So we're just going to have to see what that will bring us from next week on. But in fairness, like I've met with the Vintners Association there yesterday morning in relation to it, and we have a plan in place with them just in relation to the reopening and managing the people coming out onto the streets at say 2:30, 2 in the morning when the pubs will close, because this is the October Bank Holiday weekend. It is also the Guinness Jazz Festival, and all the pubs in the city have an exemption on Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, as they have during the Glow Festivals as well. So because that, the pubs will be open later across the entire city.
Thanks, Colm. Appreciate that. So I suppose I might open it up to the floor. John, you have your hand up there. If you want to come off mute, and I'll bring you in. Okay, while we're waiting for John there, Paddy, I might hand the floor over to there. John, I'll be back to you in a minute.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. Just to welcome the reports from Superintendent O'Sullivan and Martha, and just give a particular mention there to the news that Martha brings regarding the pedestrian crossing on Donovan's Road. I think that's quite positive, something we've been fighting for many years. So it's good to see now that it's getting the attention that it deserves. Thanks, Adrian.
Thanks, Councillor Deneen. Appreciate it. And John, if you can unmute there. Okay, John, while we're waiting for you to unmute, I might just ask Councillor Kieran McCarthy to come in there with this question. Over to you, Kieran.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. It's not a question as such, it's just to thank the Gardaí for their work. I mean, it's certainly very clear over the summer months that they were present on the streets, and I think that was appreciated by everyone, and that they managed to find a happy balance, especially in the world that we're trying to live through at the moment. And just to say, I mean, I suppose that the drinking bylaws are out for public consultation at the moment, which is something that we mentioned before the summer. I just want to thank the staff for turning that around. I think they are really, really important to how we're going to approach drinking on the street and antisocial behaviour as well, going forward. So it's no questions, just to say that we seem to be on the right track. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McCarthy. I appreciate it. And Councillor Boyle, if you'd like to come in there.
Thank you, Jen. I suppose just to note an ongoing situation and not to be too specific geographically, there's been an ongoing situation in terms of open drug taking in the general city centre area, and the locations tend to move as activity from the Gardaí and from HSE officials deals with the people concerned. Part of it is trying to deal with suppliers, and I know the Gardaí have been having increased activity and had some success in that. The wider issue, though, that I think we need to talk about in general in community safety for not only here but across the city is, and the Chief Executive has mentioned it in recent weeks, is to need to have protected injection facilities somewhere in the city. Otherwise, it's a problem that'll continue. It'll transfer from street corner to street corner, any hidden alcoves across the city. And it's something we need to be dealing with as a wider health problem. And I think a discussion here, or at least highlighting it here, might bring the policy goal of that a bit closer.
Thanks, Councillor Boyle. And we'll come back to that question in a minute. I know the Deputy O'Leary is there. Deputy O'Leary, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, sorry, I have to come off there. Just two quick ones, really. I suppose first, just to add to what Councillor Boyle was saying. Like, I mean, there's an issue. Certainly, there's an issue with open drug taking, but I also think, and I'd agree with all of his comments in that regard. But the other issue that I would raise, and I'll be general rather than be too specific on a forum such as this, I suppose there has been issues in certain streets in maybe the south centre of the city in relation to open drug dealing. Now, I know that the Gardaí are aware of it and monitoring it, but I suppose it is a concern to the community there for a long period of time, and I know that they're aware of it, but just supposed to re-emphasise the need to continue to tackle some of those issues. I would say the Gardaí know what I mean in relation to that. The other issues I want to raise is, again, I suppose it's something I'm aware that's being addressed, but there has been a number of attacks on taxi drivers in the city in recent times. I believe an arrest has been made in relation to that, but it's a hazardous occupation. I know that a lot of taxi drivers are worried about their safety. So I suppose just to say that I think it's something we need to keep an eye on, and we need to ensure that they're fully supported. I understand, as I say, an address has been made, and that's positive, and I believe the Gardaí worked with the taxi drivers in relation to that, but just I suppose to keep an eye on it, and I suppose they're, as more of the public come onto the streets at night, maybe the risks to them could increase. So, and look, I mean, I know the vast majority of taxi journeys end without any incident whatsoever, but I just think that we need to be mindful of the risks that they face and support them. I suppose just a final point there is one that regularly gets raised with us is some of the parking in bike lanes in the city centre. I saw an example there in South Main Street in the bike lane recently enough, which is actually behind some barriers and things like that. But I saw other examples recently. So look, I mean, Cork City Council has invested a lot in bike lanes in the last few years, and it's been very welcome, and it's helping in terms of sustainability and active travel, but that's undermined if people don't feel that they can use them safely because they're blocked by vehicles. So I think that's just something that we need to, the road traffic crews need to monitor and sanction fairly severely as well. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Deputy. And I suppose just on the parking, we're aware of, I suppose, that antisocial behaviour too, parking a car on a bike lane. It's not acceptable. And I suppose the Director of Services with responsibility for that is constantly, keeping an eye on what's going on around the city. But as you're aware, I mean, it's difficult to keep an eye on every single laneway of bicycle track, but certainly they are giving out sanctions where possible and where they find the culprits. So, but I think generally, I think across the organisation, we need to have very strong messaging. And Frank Fitzgerald, who's our cycling officer, I suppose part of his work is actually putting the message out there for people to be responsible and not to be abusing spaces that are there for other purposes. Just in relation to the drug dealing, etc., I might just hand over to you, Colm O'Sullivan, on that. Or Martha, did you want to come in with something?
Actually, Adrian, Deputy O'Leary's contribution there around cycle lanes just reminded me that one of the programs that we run out of the community team and we support is Age Friendly City. And my colleagues Stephen and Chris are looking to start a piece of work between the Age Friendly Forum, Cork Cycling Campaign, and other interest groups in the city to, maybe what had first kind of been brought up as an issue with cyclists and pedestrian crossings and cyclists and footpaths. But as you said, the issue of cars parking on ramps and cycle lanes and access points and footpaths, which makes life very difficult for people, any kind of, buggies, wheelchairs, whatever it is. So I suppose just to flag there that, that is an issue of priority for Age Friendly, and hopefully we'll see something really useful come out of that.
Thanks, Martha. So, Colm, I might hand over to you there with regards to Dan Boyle's question and I suppose the drug dealing issue as well.
Well, okay, I'll deal first with the injection facilities. I suppose that's an issue that is far above this forum. That is a national issue that will have decided with national things. So I just couldn't comment on it or couldn't discuss it any further. In relation to the drug taking in the city centres, yeah, look, it's like any other city across the country or across the world. Unfortunately, people are involved in drug abuse and drug use, and there are people involved in drug dealing. But we have specific operations in place for that. We have Operation Tara, which is specifically targeting drug dealers. And, we have a significant increase in the number of detections. We're up 6% this year, which was another jump on last year in terms of detections for the purpose of sale or supply. And also we're up in the terms of our detections for personal use for drug abuse or drug use in the streets. So that is something that that we're constantly on top of, and we're aware of it. And our figures would show that we are constantly addressing that issue. In relation to what Donegal O'Leary said there, in relation to the attacks on taxi drivers, those matters there are they will be before the courts, if they're not before the courts already. So I don't want to say anything there that could cause an issue in terms of a prosecution down the road. I just have to be conscious of that. In relation to the parking and cycle lanes, the City Council have done tremendous work on cycle lanes across the city. If we go Washington Street or up South Main Street, we can see where they've put in the little bollards separating the cycle lane from the main traffic thoroughfare. And it's disappointing when we come upon people that have actually gone inside it. And I know we had a significant issue down in Centre Park Road and Monaghan Road at a number of matches there during the summer, where cars just drove up onto the grass inside the cycle lanes. And, we addressed that. We issue tickets to the drivers of those, or to the vehicles when they're parked. And if the driver comes along, the driver gets the ticket as well. But I suppose very often what occurs is that a ticket is put on the windscreen of a car, but the current system is a lot of our guards now have these mobility apps, which means that a ticket isn't physically placed on the car. It is done electronically on a mobile phone, and the ticket is generated then by the mobile phone through our IT system and issued out to the driver. So if I'm walking down the street, the car that is parked in that cycle lane may have got a ticket from a guard, but no physical ticket is on the windscreen, and that gives an impression then that something may not have been done about it, when the opposite may actually have occurred.
Thanks, Colm. Appreciate that. Deputy O'Leary, your hand is still up. Is that a old hand, or has it expired?
Yeah, that's an old hand, sorry.
Thanks, Donegal. So look, are there any other questions, or does anybody? John, I'm conscious you want to get in, but you're still on mute there.
Apologies.
Perfect, John, we can hear you.
Yeah, thanks, eventually. Apologies for that. Sorry, I should have come in sooner when Martha finished, because and there was one other item that I wanted to discuss, and basically it was the situation on the general catchment area of university. We as residents, and I'm talking now about not just College Road or Connacht Avenue or Magazine Road, we're going Douglas Street, Barrack Street, all the streets. We've had the worst experiences this year that we've had in the recent past. About 2 or 3 years ago, it was, well, I suppose 3 or 4 years ago now, it was arranged that when Freshers Week, our Rag Week commenced, it commenced on the Sunday night, and it usually finished on the Thursday night. Now this year it commenced on the 12th. I made several requests to UCC to ensure that we would have cover from the Sunday night until the Thursday night, just 5 days. And on each occasion I was told, well, I don't think anything is happening. Yet on the Sunday night, which was the 12th of September, what we experienced here was we had a number of parties. I walked around the area from 8:30 to 9:30. The SCSs were invisible, and UCC apparently hadn't requested Garda cover. One house, I rang the landlord and he contacted them, and the noise died down. At 12:30, it resurrected. Then we had a further meeting with UCC and the Gardaí, and what happened then was on Thursday, the 30th of September, stroke the 1st of October, there was a party in a particular house. I got a phone call to see would I contact the landlord, which I did, and he came in and cleared about approximately, I'd say, 100 people out of the house. No, not only that, but they didn't leave the street. I know there was a lot of problems in the city centre. However, for that hour and a half, the people, and we have elderly people in the avenue, we have people with families, we have people who've been there all their life, and now they're nearly saying we should up and leave. There's been, this year, we must have a different type of student, because in Gillaby Street, there are 2 elderly ladies. I'll just give 2 or 3 examples now. And they told me themselves, they never interfere with anybody. They go get their paper, do their bit of shopping, home, maybe up to the church, whatever. This was a ridiculous situation this year. They said, when it gets dark, we don't run the lights, we go to bed. 2 separate houses. And I said, why? Because if we have the light on, they bang at our doors, they bang at our windows, starting from darkness until maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning when they've all decided to go to bed. Now, those 2 houses have been egged, as they call it, eggs thrown at their doors. And even last week, one of our residents looked out and saw 2 people walking in, and they tried to put an egg in her letterbox. That person, I met her, spoke to her today, and she's still not over it. But I think we only requested cover from Sunday night until Thursday night. And I'm sitting here tonight. Now, I've been at probably over the last 15, 20 years, even since we started. We used to have the pre-event before the Rag Week and Freshers Week down in Anglesey Street. We can't have it there now, but we were getting on, making huge improvements. But we went backwards this year, and I hope it's the end of it, because for the first time ever, in the last 2 or 3 years, families have come into the avenue. I think we have 10 or 11 kids under the age of 7, which is great. 5 families, fantastic. Yet 2 of them had said to me, if they knew what it was like, they wouldn't leave. If I meet friends, they say to me, or people sometimes, wherever I meet them, they might just say, where are you from? You know, and I'd say, oh, that's an awful place. That is one of the reasons I don't go to the media because, you know, they're getting enough of fodder. I'm not going to feed them with fodder about Connacht Avenue or College Road or Magazine Road either. And I believe people in Magazine Road have problems similar to ours. Now, some of the old landlords are very good, but again, there are some that are not. But all I'm saying is, hopefully, it is the last year it will happen that from Sunday night until Thursday that we get adequate cover. We didn't get it this year, and we suffered accordingly. And people are saying to me, you're a residents association, what are you doing for us? We're doing our best, but it's not enough. Thank you.
John, thanks for that. Colm, do you want to come in there? And
Yeah, well, I think this year was a bit unique because normally throughout the year, throughout the college academic year, there is Freshers Week and there's Rag Week, and you have the Christmas Day event. So there are 3 events. This year there were at least 2 events so far, with a possible further 2 coming down the road. The first one was the Sophomore Week, which is the first year that has ever happened, and that was for the second years who did not have the benefit of college life in 2020, in the autumn of 2020, because of the COVID restrictions and because of the fact that the college was doing everything virtually online. And that was the night that you're talking about there, John, on the Sunday night. And we had an operational order in place for the Monday to Thursday of that week. And the students were coming back to college on the Monday. And, you know, regrettably, some of them came in the week before. And there was one particular house party above in that area that was, you know, that there was a significant number of people there. And regrettably, at times our hands are tied in that we're an implied power of entry as far as the front door of any house, but we cannot enter any house beyond that point unless we do so with the consent of the owner or by under a warrant for an investigation of a criminal offence. And if we go to a hall door and they don't want to open the hall door to us, well then our hands are tied there, and then we're getting onto the landlord and working with the landlords in terms of dealing that. So it's a very, very difficult situation for us to manage in terms of the house parties. During COVID, there were certain restrictions that were brought into play under COVID regulations, but they have all, for the best part of a couple of weeks now, since early September, been stood down. So prior to this, we may have had the ability to call to a hall door and talk to them in relation to COVID regulations, because the COVID regulations are no longer in force, that our ability in that regard has been reduced significantly. In relation to Freshers Week, we had a plan in place from the Sunday night to the Thursday night, and on the Thursday night, the second night that you talk about, there were over 500 students plus a significant number of other people not related to UCC, not related to MTU, had absolutely nothing to do with students or either of those colleges, had gathered elsewhere in the city and then decided to make their way into the city centre. And that particular grouping of people came together with the students on Washington Street, and that was something that we had to please, and that was something that we had to draw our resources in from outside the city centre area to deal with and address at 12, 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, and that's just reflective of policing. As issues arise, we have to respond to it, and we have to respond in the best manner that we can. So on Thursday night, there were a certain number of guards had to be taken away from our plan up around the College Road, Connacht Avenue area to come down into the city centre to address a crowd close to 800, probably 900 people in the Washington Street area. And that is just something that we have to do, and that's something that's reflective of policing needs in the city. But, you know, certainly every other year we would have had a number of meetings, but collectively here in Anglesey Street, as you said, but because of the COVID issues this year, we held a number of meetings with UCC, with MTU and the students' unions before Freshers Week, before Sophomore Week. And I know that I had a number of meetings with the Magazine Road Residents Association in that week as well. And I met with 2 of the representatives here in Anglesey Street that week and discussed the issues that were going on above there. And I'm satisfied from my own behalf and behalf of my team that we have put in a robust plan, and we continue to police that area in as effective a manner as we possibly can. We will never eliminate every house party above there. It's just an impossibility because people will gather in houses. And we have to work within the available legislation to us, and we can't exceed that legislation under any circumstances.
Colin, thanks for that. And I suppose, look, I mean, what that demonstrates is that engagement and that communication piece is hugely important, Jan. It has to be maintained. And certainly, I suppose, we are coming out of a very difficult period. So hopefully, going forward, it might be easier to communicate and engage with people, I suppose. And maybe there might be less release of whatever it is that's going on up there at the moment. Jan, you did say that you thought it had improved. Is that correct? So it was improving.
Yes, a big improvement. However, I just take issue there. One item Colin said, Sunday night is the big night for the arrival of students to the area, to this area. And it was a case then, and I had been told by students that I know that there would be parties on, and they didn't know what night, but they were going to be on because it was being organised. Yet people I spoke to in UCC weren't aware of anything happening. And I said to them, would they check with the student union? Could they not give us that information? But I think if they're on the Sunday night, it is the night they always, up to recently, had. That's where they started their party because they had money. They came in from the country, first time maybe in college. And again, that Sunday night, which was the 12th of September, I remember it clearly because of I took a note of it. And there was a huge crowd of students arrived. And again, the Sunday night, what we had specifically asked for was Sunday to Thursday. And Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are usually fairly okay. And as Colin said, we dread to see what's going to happen now, as happened to us 3 years ago with the Christmas Day thing, when I appealed to UCC for backup our people prepared for that night, and they told me there wouldn't be anything happening, and sure, they went absolutely mad. But since then, there has been a big improvement. Now, we're very lucky with the community Gardaí we have, because not only have I have their phone numbers if I want to contact them, and which I don't give to anybody else, obviously, but their immediate response, and I'm sure they'll continue to do it. But apart from that, we're very satisfied with the approach of the Gardaí. But I suppose the SCSs, you see, were also supposed to be there. They're students from UCC who go around, pick up rubbish, contact Gardaí if they see a house party looming, one ready to go. And I'll finish now by just saying, on the Monday, the 13th, College Road, Connacht Avenue, the general catchment area of UCC, rubbish bins overturned. I've said it before at a meeting, it was like Beirut. And that was terrible. And it's very, I feel so sorry for the young people with kids, or the people with kids, but particularly the elderly people, when they look out their doors and see their bins upside down, particularly College Road was littered with bins upside down, because Monday is the collection day. And thanks anyway. And again, thanks to Colin, he's always available, if we want to talk to him, and the Gardaí in general, and particularly the community Gardaí. They're excellent.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that. Councillor Deneen, you wanted to come in there?
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. Again, just regarding Superintendent O'Sullivan there, I appreciate all the work that you and your colleagues do. And we understand that your hands are tied a lot of the time, and there's very, very little that can be done in a lot of the instances. But you did mention there, student experience was the words you used. And I've heard that a few times. It's like an entitlement to go and party and have a great time. I just remember when I went to college, it was more of a learning experience I went for rather than a student experience. But however, as we all know, the student experience that you're referring to, the experience that the residents are experiencing is very, very different indeed, and it's going on for many, many years. And as you say, your hands are tied, and I do appreciate that you engage and you encourage and you try to peacefully resolve all the situations. But do you not think it might be time for maybe for a little bit more enforcement? and a little bit less more engagement, and a little bit less more encouragement, and just move a little bit more towards enforcement and maybe put manners on some of these students for the way they behave. I know they're in private residences, and that not much can be done, but they are on the streets, they are drunk and disorderly, they are causing a nuisance, they are causing a disturbance, and surely they can be punished for that in some way. That then will put the quietness on them a little bit in that respect. I appreciate what you're saying, I appreciate the approach you make, but is it working? We need to question that. Is it working with the residents? Like for the residents, I would say it's not. You know, it's something we need to look at really, I think, going forward to ensure that we can find some stability somewhere for both sides in this ongoing situation that we have in these communities. Thanks, Adrian.
Thanks, Councillor Deneen. I don't know if Colm has anything further to add.
No, I'll come back in here. First of all, look, thanks for the comments there in relation to the community policing team, and they're on with me on the call here tonight. And in fairness to the community policing team, they're doing Trojan work throughout the city, and in particular out around the Lock area, College Road area, Magazine Road area, Connacht Avenue and all of that, and they really are engaging with the landlords. And I suppose when you look at between MTU and UCC, they're in excess of 34,000 students in the city. And we're talking of maybe 400 to 500, regrettably, that are involved in this behaviour. And we have extensive engagement, and we have more engagement now than we ever had with the Students' Union. And in fairness to the Students' Union, this year in particular, they are sending out the message to all the students. They are engaging. Like the sophomore week was a curveball for this year. That had never happened before. We've always planned to include the Sunday night, John, and even this year for Freshers' Week, we had the Sunday night included. The sophomore week wasn't supposed to start on the Sunday. It wasn't. They were coming into college on the Monday, and nobody could have anticipated what had happened on the Sunday night, on that particular Sunday night. But the following 2 weeks, when Freshers' Week was on, we did have our policing plan above there, and there were still parties took place in houses, you know. And in relation to what Councillor Deneen said there, in relation to, you know, I use the word prosecutions, and I'll just come back on one thing. When I said the student experience, they're not my words, they're the words that were put to us by the committees that were coming, that we discussed at the time as the reasons why sophomore week came about. It was because the students hadn't that experience of the year before. They're not my words in it, they're their words in it, and I was quoting from what they said. But in relation to prosecutions, yes, where there is no offence under the Public Order Act disclosed, we will address it, and we will bring that person to the bridewell, and we will bring that person before the court. We've also dealt with the I'm trying to look for a word, but I suppose the houses that the bad behaviour is conducted in, for want of a better word. We're also dealing with those people subsequent to the event. And there's a civil order there called an anti-social behavioural order, which is not a criminal prosecution, but we can issue anti-social behavioural orders, and we're doing that as well. So we are proactively following these things up. But regrettably, like if you have a crowd of 300 students on a street on a night, there's not a hope in hell that I can arrest 300 students, because for me to arrest 300 students, that's requiring 700 guards, and Cork Prison doesn't even have 300 cells in it to hold them in, right? You know, so we have to be practical as well about what we can actually do with 300 students on the street. What we have to do is try and move them on. We can't arrest the whole lot of them. You know, for every person that's arrested on the street, that's 2 guards gone off the street for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, as the case may be. It may be the case that the bridewell is full of prisoners and they have to be brought up to Mayfield or out to Toke or up to Gronabrough, or even further afield if those cells are full as well. And that is taking guards off the street. And where we can deal with it in a manner that they're dealt with effectively, yes, there will be arrests. Yes, they will be brought to the bridewell. But for the low level of nuisance, I'll call it, if there's a responsible person that is in a position to take them away and does take that person away, I'm maintaining my 2 guards on the street. And I would rather have the guards on the street dealing with the issue and moving on those people than take all the guards off the street with 4 or 5 prisoners or 6 prisoners and have them down the bridewell and have no guards in the area. So it's just maintaining that balance. And for me, the better balance is to maintain the guards' presence in that area and address the issues going on.
Thanks, Colin. Okay, so the only hand up there now is yours, Martha, but is that an old hand? Yeah, it just came up there.
No,
Okay.
it must be an old one. No.
Perfect. All right. So I don't see any other hands up, or there's no other questions. So I suppose, look, I just want to thank everybody for coming along this evening. As usual, we'll share the minutes with everybody subsequently, and obviously the chairs of the community safety forums. I suppose just to let people know as well, the COVID helpline is still open. Like, you know, I know we're coming out of COVID, but we haven't stopped that line because, I mean, there could still be issues arising for people. So please just bear that in mind. So look, I just want to say thank you very much to all of you, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Okay, and thanks for your input. Really appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Mind yourselves.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Bye.
Yep. Okay. Thanks.